Good morning. This is Aaron Hanisch, Seraphim Hanisch, the American in Exile, coming to you from our new digs. Also, we are still in Moscow. In fact, we moved not so long ago, and not very far, maybe only about half a mile from where we were before, if that much. So now we have a little bit new perspective on the semi-messy office, sometimes very messy. So I want to talk about an event that seems to be trying to make headlines all around the world, which is that the independent journalist Tucker Carlson came to Moscow on February the 1st, and it is unclear as to whether or not he is still here in Moscow or anywhere in Russia, but he did come. He was photographed at a ballet in attendance. And so this piece of news first came to my attention through the English version of the Russia Today site, which I often scan when I look for news. It's in part of my retinue. And so I also started to look for information about it on other sites from other people, and it is growing. So my story is coming probably rather late in the game, if you want to talk about it as breaking news. The story appears to be that Carlson came here. We don't know the exact reason, but the most prominent speculation is that he either is here to interview President Putin, or he is here to discuss the possibility of interviewing President Putin. I don't know really where any of that stands, but I do expect that Tucker will certainly give a report, if he hasn't done so already, in relatively short order, talking about his visit here and his impressions. It may take a couple of days while he still continues to collect those, and depending on whether he actually interviews the Russian president or not, it's his game, of course. He's timing everything the way that he needs to for his own work, and I hope that he does his usual, in my opinion, a very successful job at reporting things that a lot of us really want to know about. And because he does that. I spent a lot of time last night on Newsweek, on their website. And I want to talk about this, and I'll show you, if possible, I'll put some pictures in here to show you a little bit of the textual conversations that went on. There was quite a bit of interest when I posted a comment about this visit, saying that I think I can say this with some confidence, that the general reaction here about his coming among people that know who he is, and most of us do, is we are very hopeful that he will bring some real journalism to a situation which has been really grossly propagandized in the West, as most of our Western viewers probably are led to believe. They are led to believe that Russia is this awful, evil, terrible place, and that Vladimir Putin is a dictator that wants to reassemble the Soviet Union / empire, and that somehow this is a very, very bad thing. And as with all really good propaganda, there is just enough truth that when you mix all of the inaccuracies and the sometimes, quite frankly, lies, but opinions at the very least, perspectives into it, then you get something that is designed not to inform the people who are watching it, which is mainly the American and Western population, not to inform them of what is going on, but to direct their thinking about what they must believe and say about what is going on. And to this end, I think this is very disturbing. One of the conversations that I had in this Newsweek chat, you can go and see it yourself if you look for the article, is that some of the guys talked about how the United States is a free country. We can certainly protest anything we want. We can redress the government for grievances. We can speak freely. We can campaign for any political party or any political idea that we wish, and we do. And so some of the folks that were writing were saying, well, in Russia you can't do that. And I know that my answer is probably going to be understood as inadequate. And there are two reasons for that. One is I don't have the whole answer. Maybe three reasons. One is I don't have the whole answer. Two is maybe there is some little element of truth to some of their claims about not being able to do this, that maybe folks are scared. And I've seen things like that where people are a little reluctant to talk about certain political opinions, but they generally do. They're just sometimes a little reluctant. And three, which I think is the biggest factor, personally, is that our American friends are making the very mistaken assumption that everybody else in the world is just like they are. And when it comes to ancient monarchies like the Russian Empire or China or some of these other places, India, these very, very ancient countries that have lived for many, many centuries, even millennia, based on a different culture and a different way of doing things than our relatively young representative republic. Well, this is a bad mistake. I think it is a very poor mistake to impose upon a different culture one's own and assume that one's own culture is by definition right and that the other culture is by definition wrong. Okay? So, what do I think about Tucker's visit? I think that Tucker's visit here is a very good sign. I will point out that a few months ago he spoke in Hungary, in Budapest, and he actually said that he was not particularly interested in coming here. He had no desire to come here. He had he's not necessarily a fan of Russia. He's not necessarily a fan of President Putin. And whether or not this is because he is playing to the Hungarian crowd, which also has a history of pretty bad run-ins with the Soviet Union, and may not have the warmest feelings towards the present-day Russian government just because of the memories of the past. He may be playing to that, and he may not be playing to that. Nevertheless, he came here. And having watched Tucker Carlson, especially since his being fired from Fox, I've seen the man show a remarkable amount of integrity to what he believes is important. And he has been, you can find him on videos speaking about his own mistakes, his own willingness to believe certain assumptions were true, and then later to find out how wrong he was. And I think that a lot of his work now is somewhat personal in nature, where he's also trying to continue to discover how wrong he is. And in his discovery of how wrong he might be about certain things, if he can learn about that and pass it on to the rest of us, we might also learn that we are wrong about some things and maybe really need to rethink some things. That's one reason. Second, the man wants to avert a war. Oh yes, of course there's a special military operation that's taking place in Ukraine. And this is I don't think there's any such thing as a light-scale military operation. This is a pretty bitter grind that's going on. And some things that are taking place are things that are not really talked about in the West. I'm, talking to you from Moscow, and so I have, while I look at all sources that for news. Not just I don't just pay attention to Russian sources. There is a certain level of influence that living in a place gives you just because you're there, right? And so I can't be sure that I'm not pushed in my opinions in any way by that and by my own personal biases. I hope not to be, but it is possible, okay? That I'm a human being. All of us have personal biases. They always affect our viewpoints. This is to be expected, and part of having a free press may be the use of a free press is that you may have several different people reporting on the same thing. Each one of them has a slightly different viewpoint about it, or a very different viewpoint about it. And a discerning reader or a discerning listener might be able to digest all of this information from multiple sources and come to a better understanding of what the truth actually is. It's hard to do in our present day because most people that masquerade as journalists are really more panderers of opinion about what you're supposed to think. And because of that, news is very difficult to actually find. I'll make an observation that news itself in its most empirical form is usually quite boring. And so when you have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week news broadcasting industry across multiple platforms, one of the questions that people who run such things have to answer is, how do I get people to pay attention to our facility, our media outlet? And the easy answer is some kind of sensationalism, something added to bring excitement, interest, all of that kind of stuff. But look at my surroundings. It's probably about as boring as you can get. And hopefully, this is not a deliberate decision. I don't have this as a studio setup. This is my studio. But it looks like it looks because this is where I work. And there's nothing particularly sensational about it unless you like big monitors and, music and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, Tucker is here. And his being here gives the potential of exposing Russia and its leader and its leadership on their own terms. And I think this is very important. The last time we had a major figure journalist on this side of the pond that I remember was Megyn Kelly many years ago when she came and interviewed President Putin. And I like Megyn Kelly a lot. She is a very astute interviewer. She is a very smart lady. But her mistake when she came here was that she tried to do the American journalist trick of not being an interviewer, but something more like a prosecuting attorney. And she spent time trying to nail President Putin on some flaw or some crack in his facade that would reveal what an awful liar and a horrible man he was. And she kept trying to do it. And I remember it was very interesting. President Putin actually got kind of exasperated with it. And he said, "What is the matter with you people? Why do you keep asking the same question? I have given you the same answer over and over and over again. What is it about this that you refuse to understand?" And so this was Megyn Kelly's failure, is because she refused to, or she chose not to, just simply interview the man. Now, I've offered, I made a request to the Kremlin some months ago, to do what I'm hoping Tucker actually did. I had offered the idea of doing an interview with President Putin, with Sergei Lavrov, some of the others, Maria Zakharova, and some of the other of the real prominent leadership within the Russian Federation. And I offered this based on this idea. As a journalist, I am a non-figure. I write for the Duran. My stories get maybe several hundred to several thousand views. They do get around the world. Sometimes they do cause a little bit more ruckus than just a few thousand views. But, you know, nobody knows who I am. I'm nobody famous. I'm nobody special. And so I thought, well, this would be a great career move for me, and I indicated that in my proposal. But I also said this might be something completely unexpected to Western audiences because they will get truth. They will get an interview that is free. And I proposed the structure of the interview. Let it be whatever. Any question is allowed. Any answer is allowed. We're not going to try to focus on determining the secret plan or anything like that, but it's tell us who you are. Tell us what all of this is about. Tell us what all this really means. What is important to you? Well, you know, not surprisingly, I did not get an answer from the Kremlin. I don't know if maybe this video gets out, maybe I get lucky, but I doubt it. However, Tucker Carlson does kind of the same thing. And with his name recognition, in fact, very powerful name recognition, inexorable name recognition, no doubt, in no small part, aided by Elon Musk and his revised X Twitter platform that allows for free speech, and that means questioning the narrative. And Elon's been pretty good about this. So Tucker has his own network. He has absolute freedom to do what he wants, and he defied the State Department's recommendations, apparently, in coming here.
The Biden administration's largest intelligence gathering agency, the NSA, had been reading my private emails. Even saying that out loud is weird. It's one of those segments we never thought we would do ever. But the country has changed that much that fast. And honestly, the whole thing was kind of shocking. The government was spying on us? Come on. It seemed crazy. But it's true. And no one in Washington appeared to be shocked in the slightest. In fact, the usual shills right after our segment had a ready explanation for it. Either it never happened at all, they said, just a cable news show lying for ratings, or there must have been a good reason it happened. And they began furiously making excuses for why the NSA did it. A powerful, heavily politicized spy agency surveilling journalists who've been critical of the regime? No problem. It's perfectly normal. Just don't call it spying. But it's not normal at all. It is third world. And as we told you repeatedly, it did happen. Now that has been confirmed. Yesterday we learned that sources in the so-called intelligence community told at least one reporter in Washington what was in those emails, my emails. There was nothing scandalous in there, thank God. We're happy to report that. Late this spring, I contacted a couple of people I thought could help get us an interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin. I told nobody I was doing this other than my executive producer, Justin Wells. I wasn't embarrassed about trying to interview Putin. He's obviously newsworthy. I'm an American citizen. I can interview anyone I want, and I plan to. But still, in this case, I decided to keep it quiet. I figured that any kind of publicity would rattle the Russians and make the interview less likely to happen. But the Biden administration found out anyway by reading my emails. I learned from a whistleblower that the NSA planned to leak the contents of those emails to media outlets. Why would they do that? Well, the point, of course, was to paint me as a disloyal American, a Russian operative, been called that before, a stooge of the Kremlin, a traitor doing the bidding of a foreign adversary. And of course, I'm hardly the only person who's been accused of those things in the last several years. We've seen this movie several times now. At the same moment the communist Chinese government increases its already stunning level of control over this country, our leaders prattle on about the threat of Vladimir Putin. He's an evildoer, they tell us, a totalitarian dictator. Vladimir Putin does things that no American leader would even consider. He runs domestic disinformation campaigns. He lies to the public. He punishes people for opposing him or for believing the wrong things. He even uses intelligence agencies to spy on his own citizens. Beyond the pale stuff. So no decent American would interview Vladimir Putin, at least no reporter from Fox News. That was the point they wanted to make. That's why they planned to leak the contents of my emails to news organizations. And yesterday, as noted, we learned they actually did it. Even now, some in the media are claiming that we deserve this. Emailing with people who know Putin, are you? Of course the NSA is watching you. That's what you get. But that's hardly the point. By law, the NSA is required to keep secret the identities of American citizens who've been caught up in its vast domestic spying operations. So by law, I should have been identified internally merely as a U.S. journalist or American journalist. That's the law. But that's not how I was identified. I was identified by name. I was unmasked. People in the building learned who I was. And then my name and the contents of my emails left that building at the NSA and wound up with a news organization in Washington. That is illegal. In fact, it is precisely what this law was designed to prevent in the first place. We cannot have intelligence agencies used as instruments of political control. Both parties used to agree on that. Democrats were especially adamant on the point, but not anymore. So that's exactly what is happening here. We need to find out how this happened. Who did it? Who allowed it? Paul Nakasone would know the answer. Paul Nakasone is the highly political director of the NSA. Paul Nakasone would have been required personally to approve my unmasking. That's how it works. Paul Nakasone should explain who asked for that unmasking, and he should do it immediately. Avril Haines would also likely know the answer. Haines is the even more political director of national intelligence. She oversees all of it. She may have approved the unmasking as well. She would certainly know who asked for it and who approved it. That's her job to know. She should release that information immediately, tonight. And if Avril Haines does not release that information, she should be forced to release that information. We don't have a lot of power as a TV show, but we're going to keep pushing for that because it matters, not just to us, but to the entire country. You can't have a democracy in a place where unaccountable spy agencies keep people in line by leaking the contents of their emails, discrediting them with their own emails, which they thought were private. It doesn't work if you allow that. And we suspect congressional Republicans will also demand an answer. Many have finally awakened to the fact that the intelligence agencies, which they have blindly supported for so long, are not, in fact, their friends. They're not the friends of anyone in this country. They are dangerous. That's obvious.
There are members of Congress who are controlled by the intel agencies. I'm not speculating on this. I lived there for 35 years. I know this. I had a very high-ranking member of the House Intel Committee tell me at dinner at a restaurant in Washington when he'd been drinking, we got to talk about this. And I said, I'll text you. He goes, I can't text. And I said, why is that? And he goes, well, because NSA reads my text. And I said, NSA reads it? Wait, you're the head guy on the intelligence committee. You're their boss. You're providing oversight in our constitutional system. He's like, yeah, but, they're still spying at me. First thing. Second thing, Michael McCall, who is, the leader of, I would say, the neocons in the House, kind of low-key neocons, but neocons. I got into an argument with him once last year on the phone. He told somebody that I was a Russian agent or something, and I was outraged. So I called him on the phone, and I used bad language. I was really mad. And he said, whoa. I just got that, that's what the intel briefers told me, that you were working for Russia. And I said, that's what the intel briefers told you? You believe your fucking intel brief? Like, how old are you, son? I'm from DC. My dad was in this world. Like, you're being manipulated by your intel briefers.
Third, Tucker Carlson talked about it with the Nelk boys when it came to spying and what he believes the government is actually doing to journalists.
Definitely hiding my plan to go interview Putin just because it's an interview.
So how did that happen?
Business.
How do you know the NSA broke into your signal?
Because they admitted it.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like, can you tell us about that? Like, how did you find out?
I got a call from somebody in Washington who would know, just trust me, so I went up there for another reason, but this person said, are you going to come to Washington anytime soon? This was a year and a half ago. And I was like, yeah, actually, I'm going to be up in a week. Meet me Sunday morning. So weird. Like, who does that? Just text me. You know what I mean? Just text me. No. So I go, and this person's like, and this is someone who would know. Are you planning a trip to go see Putin? This was the summer before the war started. And I was like, how would you know that? I haven't told anybody. I mean, anybody. Not my brother, not my wife, nobody. And just because, it's one of a million things you're working on. But that was one of them. I want to go interview. Why wouldn't I want to interview Putin?
Of course.
I want to interview Xi. I want to interview everybody, right? Yeah. That's kind of my job.
We want to get Kim Jong-un on here one day.
Of course. We met him.
You did?
Yep.
Oh, we got to talk about that after. But
super interesting. But anyway.
Holy shit.
How would you know that? Because NSA pulled your text with this other person you were texting. How did you know that? And so I was intimidated. I'm embarrassed.
Because he's going to do this. He's going to try to make something right. Because right now, the efforts in the United States, through most of its media, seem to be based on the idea that a war between the American nation and the Russian nation is desirable, necessary, and winnable. And with the resident of the White House, Mr. Joseph Robinette Biden, running things, one of the things you guys may have noticed is that he seems to be creating wars everywhere. You know, his support of Israel, whether criticized for being too weak or too strong, is resulting in a genocide amongst the Palestinians in Gaza. And apparently, the power structure in Israel wants to actually go and complete the job, from some reports that I'm getting. And this is horrific. It took South Africa to press a case in the World Court to get a response that says Israel needs to cut this stuff out because what it's doing is way overdone. So Tucker can bring the opportunity for whoever he talks to here, preferably President Putin and others, to state their own view on a platform that will not be editorialized or reduced into nothing by anybody but Tucker and his staff. And he's probably going to let everything just ride, you know, because he seems to show in his other work that if we come to believe what is true, then, and if we talk about the truth, then only good things can come from it. I know, for example, from living here for a long time and from my interactions with Russian people, and, you know, yes, I am unimportant in the scale of the world, but my position here as an English speaker, as an American, makes me of great interest to some pretty important people in this country. And I have had contacts with people who have direct contacts with the president at times, or with the foreign minister. You know, can't quite get the last connection made, but I've been blessed with that. And I'm not the only one. There are other people that have also been able to do that. Russian people are interested in us. You know, they generally, they often ask me, why am I here? And then when I tell them the answers, they are often very surprised. But they are very interested. I think they would like to have their side of the story known to the West, and they feel very sad that nobody will listen. You know, we've kind of gotten to the point here where they've come to accept that nobody is going to listen to their side of the view, to their side of the story, and it's very sad. And sometimes very aggravating, especially with all these stupid sanctions, and attempts to make life difficult that have no basis in reality whatsoever. But just because Ukraine has a lot of backup in the West, because it's not Russia, and the Ukrainians are very good PR people, and the Russians are not. So this is an opportunity to set things like that correct. I don't know if I've said anything that is useful, but I wanted to give this report as a little bit of personal perspective about what's going on. It seemed like it was necessary to say something about this from the inside, because here I am, I've often made this point to people, some of my independent journalist acquaintances and colleagues. Why don't you guys contact me? Use me. I am here. I am of our group of independence journalists. I am one of two that actually live in the Russian Federation, and there's got to be something useful in having that perspective. The perspective of somebody who's lived here for a long time. I'll say a little bit more about myself. While I am an American, while I'm living here, I am not. I don't consider myself by any means what you might call an American expatriate or an expat. There are a number of them here. There's still quite a number of American expats here. And I can't really speak to the real reasons why they are here, but I've, in my observations from a distance, in my observations of their behavior, some of them are extraordinarily apolitical. They are fascinated with Russia and they like the people, and that's the end of it. Some of them have integrated themselves into the society. They've learned the language. They are with the people that the natives, if you will, and live among them and are more or less like one of them. And I'm kind of closer to that. I use, my work is primarily dealing with the English language, of course, as a teacher and lecturer and journalist and all that kind of stuff. But, my wife is Russian. My family is bilingual. I am somewhat bilingual in the language. My mother-in-law speaks only Russian. So you see, what I've done is I have immersed myself in this place, and so the reaction that I think I get from most people, based on the way they behave towards me now, they talk to me like I was one of them. They forget that I don't really know the language very well, and so I'll listen, and I don't tell them very often that I don't understand. I just look for what I do understand and try to get it out of context. And if I really don't understand, I'll say something later. But I'm one of them, more or less, and I'm just part of the crowd. And I would prefer to be that way. When I came here, I did not want to be particularly noticed as an American. I wanted to be able to sort of disappear and try to absorb what it is these people have, because they have very beautiful qualities of kindness, love, humility, patience, that I don't have as an American. We're kind of taught, give me what I want it now. And the Russians are kind of like, I want this, but I'm not going to get it. And okay, well, find some other way to do it. It's good lessons to learn. So I'll try to come back to this. I am very grateful to God that Tucker came here. I, like others, are waiting to see what the outcome of this visit is. I have little doubt that the outcome is going to be in some way extraordinary and extremely positive. But whether that positivity is just a tiny kernel of information that he tells us about his time here, or whether it is an interview or several interviews, whether it leads to more or not, I can only say I hope so. I really do hope so. Final comment there. Sorry for the ranging. It's a pretty free speech thing. What can I say? I'm an American. Free speech. I want to point out something that I said I was going to point out earlier. Censorship. There's a tremendous amount of censorship, not here, but in the United States. As I mentioned earlier, I was on a Newsweek chat, which you can see if you go and look for this article. I think it'll still be there in one of the many opinions. You have to look for me, but look for Seraphim Hanish and you will find me. Sometimes people wrote me questions and comments or criticisms, and I responded to them. And the guidelines on the site say be kind, don't inflame people, but be kind, and I am. I am. But when I tried to to write on these comment sites about who my news sources are, where I get my information from, I was blocked for consideration. Maybe these are released now, but your comment is awaiting review. There's a problem with it. So then I tried another one. Somebody asked me they didn't know what my motives were for the way I was responding. And my motives about responding the way I do about Russia are simple. I live here. My family is Russian in part. My wife and my kids with me. I love the people here. They are my friends. They have adopted me in their homeland. I love my country, the United States. I see both sides, and I think the people of both of our countries are wonderful. And so I want to be supportive in the idea of our nations getting along. That is my motive. I'm rather positive in that idea. I don't see anything wrong with that. So I wrote that, and that too was also suspended, waiting for review. From Newsweek, an American news organization. Our First Amendment says that the freedom of the press shall not be abridged. Newsweek is not defying the First Amendment because it is a private business and it can do whatever it wants to in terms of editing content on its own site. Granted. However, when it comes to the spirit of public discourse, the idea that is encapsulated in the First Amendment says you ought to be able to freely say anything. You should not do harm to others. But saying things is not the same thing as harming people. You know, does anybody remember the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? Has that really completely been ejected now? And that now we must have something like nannies, internet nannies, that govern the kind of thoughts that are okay to share with other people as Americans? Is this right? I mean, think about it. I'm living in a country that the American media spends a lot of its time accusing of as being restrictive, not free, lots of censorship, mind control, whatever you want, all this kind of stuff. They're saying that about Russia, and yet they're doing it in the United States. And Newsweek is not the only one. I've had this problem with Fox. I've had this problem with other networks. YouTube itself has deleted videos on occasion from me because I said things. There was one that a certain event that happened a few years ago was widely disbelieved by a large segment of the population. And I talked about it on a video here, and it was taken down because it said that is against the rules. You're not allowed to dispute the integrity of blank. You'll know what it is, right? You're not allowed to dispute the integrity of the 2020 blank. You can for 2016, you can for 2012, 2008, 2022, but not 2020. And why? Why are we doing this? Why are we telling each other what you can and cannot talk about on public networks? I hope this video survives. But this is one of the things that is really troubling. This idea that freedom of speech is only free when I say it's free, which means I get to tell you what you can and cannot say. I don't think that's the idea that the framers of the Constitution had when they put in the First Amendment. I just don't think that is so at all. Editors can do whatever they want. Sure, I understand. I'm an editor. I do things like that. But I would rather have dissenting opinions freely expressed and let it be a public discourse, because I might be wrong. It's okay. I have the right to be wrong. You have the right to be wrong. And maybe with a bunch of people being wrong, discussing things, maybe they come to understand what is wrong and they find out what the truth is. But when we've got nannies telling us that we cannot say certain things, we cannot say certain words, and then the allowed speech changes over time, usually due to inconvenient embarrassment, why do we waste our time with this? So this is my question to all of my listeners, especially to the American people that disagree with me. Disagree with me. Go for it. I'm just a guy over here on a camera, on the internet. What I say does not really move mountains. It doesn't move the world. Most folks don't even pay attention. But if I'm right, then I have to say it. And I think I'm right about some of these things. So maybe all of them. And so I'm speaking the truth because it seemed like it was a compelling nature or a compelling issue to do so. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, like, subscribe, join my channel, tell other people about it if you think that they might find what I have here useful. There are certainly a number of other videos on my channel, American in Exile, and also look for my other YouTube channels where you can see music and all this. Also check out my colleagues and friends, Alex Christoforo and Alexander Makuris of the Duran, Dr. Steve Turley, Larry Johnson, there's so many of these really, really great independent journalists out there that are doing a wonderful job. And I am happy to give any kind of support to them. And, because we are trying to do something that we believe is good and right and true. Anyway, have a great day. God be with you, and I will talk with you soon.